Learning to communicate effectively with your partner is one of the fundamental things that can help to keep your relationship in good standing. DStv, who is a regular guest on the show, recently authored a book that deals with being able to communicate without misunderstandings. She's here to chat to us some more about the communication problems that we experience, as well as tools that can assist to deal with those. Welcome, Leah. Good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
So that's not what I meant. I think it's something that a lot of people have said time and time again.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about these communication problems that arise with not getting the right meaning through in the words that we're using.
I think that there's 6 major communication problems that I experience when I work with, and it's not just couples that I work with, it's anyone in corporate, family members, friends. Any communication can have these misunderstandings. So it starts with understanding that we have completely different views of reality. Every person on earth sees the world in a very unique way, and we all think our way is the right way, and if our partner or the friend or the family member could just get our way, then we wouldn't be having problems here. So I think the first big problem is that you're listening, but you're not really hearing what the other person is saying. So you're kind of waiting for your turn to respond, and you're not actually hearing where it is they're coming from. And it's one of the biggest secrets for improving communication is really listening to where the other person is coming from and not making them wrong just because you disagree with it.
Okay.
So the second thing that's a big problem is interrupting people when they speak. You think you know what somebody wants to say. You think you know how the sentence is going to end. You want to speed this up and get it over and done with, so you quickly interrupt them. And we need time to translate our thoughts into words, into communication that makes sense. It takes time for us to think our way through. And as you'll see when you read the book, there are 4 systems of communication. Only 2 of those are able to talk quite quickly and easily from thought to vocabulary to speaking. So the other 2 systems really struggle. And when you constantly interrupt somebody who might be in one of those systems, it stops them being able to process what it is that they need to say. So interrupting is incredibly disempowering. I think a big thing with communication, and I think everybody can relate to this, is that people just don't say what they mean because they're nervous of the reaction. They're nervous of upsetting somebody else. So we've learned to sugarcoat stuff, that we talk around the issue instead of just getting to the issue. And then we kind of slide the issue in at the very end, thinking we've got the communication across. The other person didn't hear it. And they carry on with the behavior. And then we get irritated later going, but I told you this. It's like you didn't say it clearly. You weren't saying what you really mean. You were beating around the bush. So lack of clear communication is a huge issue with any communication issues. Being unwilling to learn or grow. Like if the person is talking to you, trying to tell you what is not working for them, you've got to be willing to hear some of that feedback. And yes, it's hard. It's not easy to hear that they're unhappy with you or the way you're behaving or speaking isn't okay. But if you're not willing to take that on and go, maybe I need to shift the way I communicate or shift the way I behave, you're not learning, you're not growing. And then it's like that running around with one foot nailed to the floor. You're going to keep having the same communication fights again and again and again. So being willing to just take a look at yourself and go, maybe there's some stuff that I need to learn.
And I think what's very important with all the 6 elements that you've just mentioned is that it takes self-reflection to realize that the way you are is often the reason other people don't understand what you're trying to say. I find that very interesting because so often we're so quick to blame others. You know, it's your fault, you didn't listen, you didn't say, you didn't think. But it's not necessarily the case.
And people say that, nobody ever understands me. Well, then you're the common denominator here. If no matter who you are speaking to, those conversations are met with resistance or irritation or a lack of clarity, then you have to look at yourself. You are the one that is maybe not expressing yourself in a workable way.
Absolutely. And you talk about communication filters in the book. Tell us a bit more about that.
So as I said earlier, we all see reality in a very particular way, and these internal filters, they're like our internal mental filters, are how we perceive the world. So they're our belief systems, our values, our morals, our ethics. One of these filters is our communication filter, and this is from very, very young. So from the first, I'd say, 7 years of our life is where we are creating these internal filters of what we believe reality to be. And in communication filters, I believe that a particular tone of voice you use means something, or a vocabulary you use means something, or body language you use means something. So in adulthood, we can get quite triggered by somebody else's behavior, because it's not really what they're saying or doing. It's reminding us about a parent that used to say or do that when we were kids. And our filter has taught us to believe that that can only mean this. And that when you use that tone of voice, it can only mean that you're angry. It doesn't mean anything else. But for the person you're speaking to now, it isn't anger. It does mean something else. So these filters warp our reality to only see what we believe it to be. And it's hard, because the other person on the other end, and anyone in a relationship can relate to having had an argument with somebody, and they throw something at you and you go, but that's not what I meant. I never said that. That's not what I intended. Because they're not hearing you, because they're only hearing you through the filter of their mind.
Indeed.
That isn't the truth of where you are coming from. So any relationship is about learning about each other's filters and views of reality, so that communication can be clearer.
What about communication within certain systems? So you've got, you might be frustrated and angry, and your communication comes out a certain way. You might be happy, and a similar communication would come out completely differently. So how about moderating from your side how you are communicating to people?
I think it's first identifying, what system the person is that you're speaking to. Now, in the book, yes, there's a test that you do to find out which system you are, but quite honestly, you'll know what system you are just reading the system. And when you've read these 4 systems, it becomes quite obvious to identify what somebody else's system is. So if you can identify you are speaking to, let's say, an observer, who's a very visually based communicator, then you will understand you need to have eye contact, you need to be face to face, you can't be doing telephonic conversations, you can't send an email. Whereas, the analyzer is somebody who really doesn't want face to face, and they do want written communication. And this book helps you identify what these systems are, so that you can learn to adapt how you're speaking so that the other system can hear you. Because we are all in our own systems, but there's a way to learn what they are, and then shift the communication accordingly.
Very interesting. And now, in terms of code words, it's another aspect that you talk about. How are these helpful in communicating?
They're helpful for conflict. So, you with your partner, they say something, and it's that same old fight you've had 50 times before. And instead of now going into a whole big fight again, of, you always do that thing, and when we go out to dinner parties, and you always say that thing to me, and now it turns into this whole fight. A code word is a single word to sum up the whole issue. So if it's the same fight you're always having about, you always interrupt me when we're in public at a dinner party, you can choose a code word, which can be a random word that's not like awkward, let's say. So that can be the code word. And if you're in public again, and the partner or your friend, someone starts doing that thing, you can just say, Michael, awkward. And
so it's like a diffusing tactic, really.
Totally diffuses. Now they know what it means. They know they need to check their behavior. You don't need to get angry with them about it. You can just call them on the word. And usually the reason I say it must be a ridiculous word is because both people just pack up laughing. It sounds so absurd in the moment.
Absolutely.
But so you can either use a code word. I suggest using code words in private. But when you're in a public space, code sentences. Because if we had a dinner party and I say, Michael, awkward, like everyone at the table is going to go, what is going on? But if you use a code sentence like, Michael, did you remember to switch the alarm on before we left the house? That's a normal thing to ask. But between the two of you, you know that means you're interrupting me again, stop doing that.
And you're not airing your dirty laundry.
Exactly. But it's calling, because we are very unconscious in our behavior. And sometimes we don't know when we're doing or saying something that's triggering the other person. So code words and sentences are a light way to just call attention to it without it turning into an entire drama and fight.
And I suppose also that discussion to agree on code words is a lovely opportunity to discuss the things that are problematic without it being a sort of an attack or a defensive situation.
And it's to say, maybe you're not aware that you keep doing this or saying this thing. It doesn't work for me, but I know that you're not conscious to it. So I'm going to support us shifting this by telling you when you're engaging the behavior so you can change it. So it's more of a supportive act than an attacking act when it comes to correcting communication.
Leah, that's not what I meant. The title of your book, is it available all over the place? Where can we find it?
Absolutely. It's available in all major bookstores, so you can get exclusive books and all e-tailers like Take-A-Lot and Loot. And the Kindle version is available on Amazon.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for giving us a glimpse into what's inside. I think a lot of people are probably going to be diving in to go and find their own copy. And thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure.